Welcome to Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I'm Jenny, and I'll be your guide on this tour through some of the most intriguing and mind-boggling cases out there. Before we get into today's topic, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever, by A.M. Wolfe, now available on Amazon. An intriguing read that explores at length a contentious episode in U.S. history. I see. What do you have planned for today's meal? Has anyone ever heard of the incident at Dyatlov Pass? Then fasten your seatbelts, because you're about to go on an adventure. Imagine a party of 9 seasoned hikers out on a trip in the frigid Ural Mountains of Russia in 1959, and they never come back. Not only are their deaths shocking when they are finally located, but the strange and seemingly supernatural events surrounding them do as well. This occurrence has baffled investigators, scientists, and armchair detectives alike for decades. From unexplainable injuries to mysterious footprints, every element seems to add another dimension to this puzzle. Is it more plausible that aliens were involved, an avalanche, military testing, or an attack by wild animals? The hypotheses are as many as they are outlandish. But don't worry if this is all new to you. Over the following hour, we'll deconstruct the riddle little by bit, starting from the very beginning. We'll explore who these hikers were, what went wrong, and the various hypotheses that have sought to explain the inexplicable. So grab a nice seat and maybe keep a light on, because this story is one that remains long after you've heard it. Let's plunge into the frightening enigma of the Dyatlov Pass incident. Okay, so let's set the stage for this terrifying narrative. Picture this. We are in the heart of the Ural Mountains in Russia, a location as isolated and untamed as it gets. This lonely region of forest is known as Dyatlov Pass, named after Igor Dyatlov, the leader of our ill-fated group. This place is very gorgeous, with snow-capped peaks, deep forests, and chilly winds that cut right through you. But in 1959, this magnificent environment turned into the setting for one of the most amazing mysteries of the 20th century. In late January of that year, 9 young Soviet hikers, 7 men and 2 women, all in their 20s and early 30s, set off on an adventure. And these weren't your weekend hikers, mind you. These individuals were the real deal, experienced adventurers who knew how to handle themselves in the outdoors. They were engineering students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, feeling ready to confront the elements. Their goal? To climb the crest of Otorten Mountain, roughly 10 kilometers north of where they would meet their end. On paper, it appeared a tough yet feasible achievement, even for these seasoned hikers. The plan was meticulous. They had mapped out their itinerary, had all the essential supplies, and even kept a log of their day-to-day activities. But what could go wrong, right? Cut to February, and things take a bad turn. When the group failed to return as anticipated, search teams were deployed very immediately. What these searchers uncovered when they finally arrived to the group's last encampment is stuff that nightmares are made of. The hiker's tent was found abandoned, slashed open from the inside, as if they had fled in absolute fear, right into the brutal, sub-zero night. And this was just the beginning of a mystery that has puzzled even the most seasoned investigators and philosophers for decades. Imagine, if you will, the dramatic contrast. In the center of gorgeous and perilous terrain, the mute witnesses to a catastrophe were just there, the mountains, the trees, and the snow. No one to recount the tale, only unsettling hints left behind. As we go deeper into this story, we'll unearth more layers regarding the Dyatlov Pass incident that will keep you on edge and pondering what could possibly have happened that cold, cruel night. Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. Now, let's talk about the intrepid folks who embarked on this ill-fated voyage. Picture it. January 1959, the frigid wilderness of the Ural Mountains, 10 expert hikers, and one ambitious dream, to conquer the peaks and reach Otorten Mountain. Leading the effort was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, a 5th-year radio engineering student at Ural Polytechnical Institute. Spirited, clever, and extremely capable, Dyatlov was the kind of guy who didn't back down from a challenge. Joining Igor were 9 other explorers, each with diverse abilities and backgrounds, connected by a mutual love of the great outdoors. Zenaida Kolmogorova, 22, was known for her persistent ambition. Her experience and brightness made her a valuable component of the group. Then there was Yuri Krivenishenko. Friends dubbed him Georgie. He was the group's comedic relief, often brightening the mood with his comedy. Krivonishenko was also an engineering student and had worked on nuclear research, which wasn't unusual in the Cold War era. Yuri Doroshenko, 21, embodied the spirit of adventure and reputedly once scared off a bear with a geologist hammer, a story fit for folklore. Taking his position as the defender of the group was Rustem Slobodin, 23, a mechanical engineering student and an athletic powerhouse who liked skiing and mountaineering. Alexander Kolovatov, 24, was a fourth-year student of nuclear physics, quiet and analytical, with eyes that always seemed to be scrutinizing his surroundings. Ludmila Dubinina, the youngest member at 20, was recognized for her fiery energy and unyielding commitment. She had already shown herself on other hard excursions. Another member, Yuri Yudin, experienced an awful stroke of luck, or perhaps it was fate. He fell unwell early in the journey and had to return home, escaping the catastrophe that awaited his pals. Then we have Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, 24, a guy of two cultures with a Russian-French pedigree, bringing with him a strategic mind and an unyielding drive. Semyon Zolotaryev, 38, the group's elder, offered a wealth of expertise from his days as a soldier and an outdoorsman. Finally, we had Yuri Yefimovich, who was an observer and a last-minute addition to the team. These 10 fearless souls started off on January 23, full with enthusiasm and companionship. They planned to reach Gora Otorten, aptly meaning, "Don't go there" in the indigenous Mansi language. A note worth taking? Maybe. The hikers caught a train to Evdel, a village at the border of the forest, and from there, they drove a truck to Visay, the final populated settlement. On January 28, Yuri Yudin's illness prompted him to turn back, allowing the remaining 9 to continue. This was a harsh blow, but the crew pressed on, documenting their adventure with diary entries and images, overflowing with optimism. On January 31, the hikers set their tents at a wooded spot and spent a day preparing for the ascent. The next day, February 1, they started to ascend, but increasing weather conditions compelled them to set up camp on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl, meaning Dead Mountain. It's here that things took the worst turn. Imagine them huddled together, planning their path, joking and smiling despite the stinging cold, oblivious of the terror that was ahead. The journey itself was normal for such experienced hikers, making following developments all the more perplexing. So, what precisely happened when they set up camp on February 1? How did a bunch of seasoned explorers with everything working for them find themselves in such a terrible and puzzling situation? As we continue further, we will find the succession of perplexing events that followed their last known journal entry. Alright, let's fast forward to that frigid February of 1959. Picture this: snow-covered mountains, a piercing cold that gnaws at you, and an eerie silence that envelopes the terrain. It was here, in the midst of this terrible environment, that searchers stumbled across a scene straight out of a nightmare. The hiker's tent, their temporary haven from the brutal elements, was found abandoned, hauntingly still. But this was no ordinary abandoned tent situation. No, this tent had been slashed open from the inside. Now, pause for a while and let that sink in. What could possibly force a group of seasoned hikers, who knew the hazards of the outdoors, to tear through their only shelter and dive into a deadly frigid night? It's like a conundrum wrapped in an enigma and served with a side of shivers. These were not just any hikers. They were carefully selected adventurers, with expertise under their belts. This wasn't their first rodeo. Yet, something truly terrifying, drove them to such drastic actions. The questions swirl in the mind like a snowstorm. Was it an animal attack? But wait, the tent wasn't destroyed by claws. It was precisely cut by something sharp and intentional. Maybe terror took over the group, owing to some internal struggle, but even that doesn't exactly add sense. Why depart in such a hurry and in such a strange manner? As investigators studied the scene, they noted several strange details. All the personal possessions and supplies were left behind, untouched. It's as if the hikers jumped up and departed in a heart-pounding second, throwing prudence to the cold winds. This is where the mystery actually blossoms, like a frost flower blooming in the midst of chaos. The searchers went on, following the thin footsteps left by the fleeing hikers, pushing through the deep snow with a mix of dread and determination. What they found next only exacerbated the enigma. The first two dead were located near the tree line, just clad in their underwear, suggesting they fled the tent in a frenzied rush. Their lifeless remains were found next to embers of a makeshift fire, as if in a final, desperate attempt to stave off the harsh cold. The instant thought is total, terror-fueled flight. But from what? As more bodies were unearthed, each discovery brought with it layers upon layers of mystery. A handful were found at varied distances from the tent, some exhibiting unusual injuries, fractures, internal damage without apparent impact. It was like something out of a horror movie, but very, very real. The coroner's reports added to the unsettling conundrum. Some of the hikers had injuries identical to those sustained in a vehicle crash, while others exhibited evidence of high radiation levels. Yes, you heard that right. Radiation. This isn't the kind of detail that crops up in your everyday hiking mishap. So we're left with a tent cut open from the inside, a frightened flight into severe cold, and victims found with injuries that defy simple explanation. Whatever happened on that fatal night at Dyatlov Pass has baffled academics and sparked wild speculations for decades. Stay tuned, because in our next installment, we'll look deeper into the clues left behind, the footprints, the bodies, the coroner's confusing reports. And believe me, the mystery only gets thicker from here. As rescuers continued their search, new information came to light that both amazed and perplexed everyone involved. Let's dive into these frightening revelations and explore why they simply compounded the enigma. So, image this. Search teams trudging across the harsh, frigid countryside stumbled upon a line of tracks zigzagging away from the camp. These weren't the jumbled prints of individuals escaping an urgent threat. These were purposeful footsteps, as if the hikers had strolled peacefully into the night without their shoes. Imagine racing into the pitch-black, freezing wilderness without a moment's doubt. Bizarre, right? The traces led rescuers to the first two dead, found on the edge of the forest. Dubinina and Krivonishenko were found dressed only in their underwear, laying amid remnants of a fire. Why would these hikers, clearly aware of the chilly weather, venture out thus badly clothed? Theories abound, but answers remain elusive. About a few hundred meters distant, the search team uncovered Dyatlov's body. He was facing the direction of their camp, as if trying to return. Tragically, his lifeless corpse lay in a snow-covered stance, almost comparable to that of a fallen soldier. Alongside him, they found the bodies of Thibaut Brignol, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. Each one revealed a horrific tale. Rustem was believed to have a broken skull. However, no external wounds suggested what may have caused such blunt force damage. And here's where it gets even weirder. The remaining members of the group, Dubinina, Kolovatov, and Zolotaryov, weren't discovered until months later after the snow had partially melted. These three were found concealed in a valley, clothed in cloths that appeared to have been stripped from their slain friends. Makeshift bedding was built into the snow, which suggested they had endured somewhat longer than the others. You're undoubtedly wondering now what the coroner's reports revealed. Well, hang on to your hats, because these details are amazing. Dubinina's body exhibited serious internal damage akin to a car wreck. However, her skin remained largely intact. To add even more interest, her eyes and tongue were absent. Zolotaryov, found under identical settings, also suffered equally bizarre internal traumas without corresponding exterior wounds. These odd injuries defy logical explanation. Naturally, this peculiar mix of clues spawned a number of theories, from the conceivable to the truly fanciful. Some assumed it was an avalanche, yet the footprints showed an unhurried exit, not a panicked hurry. Others cited hypothermia-induced paradoxical undressing, but this would hardly account for the severe internal injuries. And let's not disregard the sightings of odd orange orbs in the sky, reported by other hikers in the Urals, range the same night the tragedy occurred. UFO enthusiasts were ready to jump in, indicating potentially alien involvement. With no traces of radiation or extraterrestrial fingerprints, though, this theory gradually waned. Other ideas hinted at covert government experiments or military involvement, alluding to Cold War-era secrecy and the possibilities for clandestine experimentation. Official reports denied such activities. In fact, many official comments merely encouraged greater conjecture. So, Why were the seasoned hikers calm enough to stroll into a lethal freeze? And how did they sustain such odd injuries? Despite the variety of fascinating and often bizarre theories, the reality remains that each clue found merely confused the waters. None of the pieces perfectly fit together to produce a coherent image. Tragedy, intrigue, and the merciless terrain have etched the Dyatlov Pass incident firmly into the annals of unsolved mysteries. And so, my listeners, while you examine these bizarre and terrible clues, the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident only insistently pleads for a closure that might never come. Alright, let's dive into the crazy world of hypotheses and speculations surrounding the strange Dyatlov Pass incident. Grab your tinfoil hats, guys, because some of these theories are absolutely out of this world, literally. First up, let's talk about one of the most jaw-dropping theories: UFOs. Yes, unidentified flying things. Some individuals point to weird lights seen in the sky. At the same time the hikers met their sad fate. Could it be that extraterrestrial visitors had a role to play in this horrific event? Proponents of this theory suggest that the strange injuries and the quick flight from the tent might have been caused by an alien contact. It's a theory that's rich in drama, but, let's be honest, a bit short in real evidence. Now, if aliens aren't your cup of cosmic tea, perhaps you like something a bit closer to Earth: government experiments. During the Cold War, hidden experiments were not quite unheard of. In fact, some researchers claim that the hikers stumbled into a hidden military test facility. The luminous orbs sighted in the sky? Some think there were parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military. The pressure from the shockwaves could perhaps explain some of the damage discovered on the remains. However, the government has never confirmed any such action in that area. Intriguing, no? Let's shift from the gloomy constraints of military experiments to the natural world with the avalanche theory. This idea is one of the most frequently accepted explanations among scientists. The idea is simple. An avalanche hit the hikers' tent, leading them to panic and cut their way out. They then escaped into the bush, insufficiently prepared, leading to their terrible deaths from cold and other injuries. On paper, it makes a lot of sense. But doubters claim that the slope wasn't the appropriate angle for a usual avalanche, and that the tent was found with snow heaped on top, suggesting it hadn't been buried. Another alternative is the katabatic wind theory. Essentially, katabatic winds are incredibly powerful and falling, capable of driving even experienced hikers to flee their shelter in a hurry. These winds may be abrupt and devastating, and the sheer power could explain why the hikers ripped through the tent in a desperate bid to escape. It's a logical theory and explains the torn tent, although it doesn't completely address the unusual injuries observed on some of the dead. And what about the ever-mysterious infrasound theory? This one's a bit more out there, but is still anchored in science. According to this idea, a weather phenomena called a Kármán vortex street might have generated infrasound, frequencies that people can't hear, but can feel. These infrasound waves are hypothesized to trigger panic attacks and physical discomfort. Essentially, the sound waves might have drove the hikers into a condition of near insanity, prompting them to bolt from the tent in utter chaos. Now, if you're a lover of cryptids, you might enjoy the hypothesis concerning a yeti, or, as locals name it, the mank. Some say a big, unknown beast frightened the hikers, prompting them to cut their way out of the tent and make a fast escape. This notion is reinforced by unusual footprints found at the spot and local tradition. But, let's face it, quoting yetis is a little hard to back up with scientific data. Moving on to more personal explanations, some argue that internal disputes among the group could have led to a collapse that night. Personal arguments, or a collective psychological trauma, could have spiraled into the anarchy observed. However, this doesn't mesh well with the forensic data and the type of the injuries found on the bodies. Lastly, we have to handle the issue of radiation. Some of the hikers' clothing was discovered to be mildly radioactive. This has prompted curiosity about what might have produced such pollution. Was it due to their closeness to military operations, naturally occurring radioactive particles in the environment, or possibly something the hikers themselves carried into the area? The truth is, the source of the radiation is still unclear, adding another dimension to this already intricate puzzle. So, where does all this leave us? With a lot of questions, and not a whole lot of solid answers. Each theory has its own persuasive facets and glaring holes. It's as if the more we attempt to understand, the more elusive the reality gets. But isn't it what makes the Dyatlov Pass incident so endlessly fascinating? As we comb through the data and speculations, it's evident that this conundrum continues to captivate and baffle us. Whether you're inclined to believe in alien visitation, hidden government machinations, or the sheer unpredictable power of nature, one thing is certain: the Dyatlov Pass incident is a mystery that will continue to intrigue for years to come. It's intriguing how certain mysteries refuse to be constrained by the past, and that's exactly the situation with the Dyatlov Pass incident. Over the years, this bone-chilling drama has seen a continual trickle of new claims and facts sprouting up, trying to throw light on what truly happened that awful night in 1959. Let's go into some of these theories, shall we? Back in 2019, 60 years after the tragedy, the Russian authorities revisited the matter, garnering newfound attention. They decided that the most credible explanation was that an avalanche prompted the hikers to flee their tent in a panic. However, many people remain unconvinced of this official explanation. Why? Because the original search teams reported no signs of an avalanche, and the angle of the slope was believed too modest to trigger one. One particularly intriguing but troubling notion emerged from an investigation of the hikers' injuries. Some experts pointed out that the trauma experienced by the hikers resembled those encountered in high-impact car wrecks, rather than anything caused by a snowslide. This has caused others to wonder about the potential of covert military testing gone awry, perhaps using weapons that could cause such serious injuries without leaving obvious external damage. And then we have the advent of technology, offering amateur sleuths and professional detectives alike additional tools to work with. For instance, more recent DNA testing on the hikers' bodies has ruled out any involvement of other humans at the scene, which puts a bit of a damper on some of the more crazy hypotheses involving masked assailants or escaped criminals. Another new development came from the analysis of the hikers' diaries and images. These have been digitized and made freely available, providing for a more nuanced view of the chain of events leading up to that fatal night. The photographs, depicting the team's great spirits mid-journey, add layers to the poignant contrast of their fatal conclusion. Plus, decrypting their precise notes has given insights into their decisions, making the frantic, disoriented escape even more perplexing. Then let's discuss about the katabatic wind theory. Katabatic winds are unusually strong blasts that can drop rapidly and are cold enough to induce hypothermia quickly. Some experts say this could explain the hikers' odd behavior, leaving the tent and gear. But, again, problems in this idea remain, like how they managed to journey so far in sub-zero conditions before dying. In recent years, a group of experts employed computer modeling to replicate the avalanche scenario, integrating data from NASA with staged portions from the movie Frozen. No joking. They determined that a modest, delayed avalanche could potentially explain the injuries and absence of considerable snow displacement. Now, whether Disney's animation talents can answer real-world secrets is yet to be seen, but it certainly put a modern twist to the discussion. So, what do we make of all this fresh information? Well, it's a mixed bag. For every piece of evidence supporting the avalanche theory, there seems to be another pointing towards something even more enigmatic, and perhaps even more malevolent. And here we are, still enthralled, still piecing together parts of a story that seems to keep rewriting itself. Will we ever know the absolute truth? Maybe not. But in a way, it's the mystery itself that continues to captivate, a constant reminder of how little we sometimes know about the world, and just how far curiosity may take us. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a haunting testament to the unknown, merging elements of adventure, tragedy, and intrigue. As we learn more, maybe we'll get closer to the truth, or maybe, just maybe, certain secrets are meant to remain. And that, my friends, wraps up another curiosity-driven episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. We've wandered the snowy, enigmatic slopes of Dyatlov Pass, tried to decode the inexplicable footprints in the snow, and shaken our heads over theories that range from the spine-chilling to the downright bizarre. Who knew that a group of brave hikers in 1959 would leave us with a problem that even defies the brightest minds today? It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, coated with conspiracy theories, and seasoned with a sprinkle of pure, unadulterated curiosity. Before you race off into your own icy wilderness of imagination, don't forget to explore deeper into another dose of mystery and history with our sponsor's book, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever, by A.M. Wolfe. Available on Amazon, and just ready to turn your suspicions and curiosities up a notch. Much like Dyatlov Pass, it's one of those stories that makes you think, question, and reevaluate what you know about history. And come on, who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory before bed? If you found yourself intrigued by today's tale, make sure you hit that subscribe button, rate us, leave a review, and let's keep this circle of inquiry and confusion continuing. Your input not only maintains the wind in our sails, but also helps me know which puzzles make your mind race the most, and trust me, I've got a treasure trove full of them, just waiting to be unlocked. Next time, we'll dive into another case so terrifying, so bizarre, it'll keep you on the edge of your seat. We may wander from eerie, unsolved murders to the baffling phenomenon and everything in between. Trust me, there's never a dull moment in the world of restless killers and mysteries. Thank you for accompanying me on my voyage through time and terror. I'm Jen, your guide into the maze of intriguing puzzles and spooky enigmas. Keep curious, keep skeptical, and most importantly, stay safe out there. Until next time, keep those ears open and your mind sharp. There's another story waiting just around the corner. Catch you on the opposite side, mystery lovers.